welcome back to Echo Mind Documentaries. If this is your first time here, subscribe, like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Today's story isn't just about the past, it's about the voices history left behind. Millions spoke, generations lived, but not all were remembered. What if the stories we know are only a fraction of what truly happened? During moments like the Berlin Conference, lines were drawn, not just across land, but across identity and memory. Yet some stories refuse to disappear. They live in culture, in silence, in the echoes we're only now beginning to hear. This is for the voices that were never heard. Millions of voices, centuries of wisdom, erased, but the land never forgets. What if the most powerful civilizations in human history were African, and the world simply decided not to remember? There are stories buried beneath this soil that no textbook will ever teach you. This is one of them. There is a kind of silence that is not natural. It does not come from emptiness. It comes from something being removed, deliberately, carefully, and over a very long time. Africa holds within her the oldest human stories ever told. Before the pyramids of Giza rose against the desert sky, before the trade winds carried ships across the Mediterranean, before any empire set its name upon stone, there were people here, living, thinking, building, loving, leading. Their names were not recorded in the books that reached your classroom. Their cities were not drawn on the maps that shaped your understanding of the world. Their philosophies did not appear in the libraries that informed what the West called civilization. And yet they existed, fully, completely, with the same depth and fire that any human heart has ever carried. The Kingdom of Kush stood for over 1,000 years. Its rulers wore the double crown of Egypt. Its scholars sat at the center of international trade. Its women led armies and governed nations. The city of Meroe was a seat of iron smelting so advanced that archaeologists still marvel at what they find beneath the Sudanese sand. But ask most people on this earth today what they know of Kush, and the silence you will receive is its own kind of answer. The Mali Empire stretched across West Africa like the shadow of a giant. Mansa Musa, its 14th century ruler, carried a wealth so staggering that when he made his pilgrimage to Mecca, he caused inflation across the entire Mediterranean world simply by passing through. He gave gold freely. He built mosques in every city he touched. He funded the construction of libraries in Timbuktu that housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Manuscripts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, jurisprudence, and the nature of the human soul. Those manuscripts still exist. Most of them have never been translated. Most of the world has never been told they were there. Timbuktu was not a myth. It was not a distant metaphor for a place too far to reach. It was a real city, in a real desert, filled with real scholars who debated the nature of God and governance and justice with the same seriousness and sophistication as any university in the known world. But the story that was told across centuries painted it as something primitive, something unreachable, something that existed beyond the edge of the civilized world. That story was not accidental. When European powers began dividing the continent of Africa at the Berlin Conference of 1884, they were not simply drawing borders across a map, they were drawing borders across memory, across identity, across the inheritance that an entire people carried in their blood, in their stories, in their ceremonies, and their names. They replaced what was there with what they needed to justify what they were doing. And what they needed was a story that said, these people have nothing worth preserving. These people have no history worth recording. These people need to be saved from themselves. That story spread. It entered schools and churches and newspapers and encyclopedias. It entered the minds of children who grew up believing it. Children in Europe who learned to see Africa as a dark continent waiting to be lit. And children in Africa who learned to see themselves through that same foreign and diminishing lens. But the land remembers. The Great Zimbabwe ruins rise from the earth in the southeastern highlands of the country that took its name from them. Massive walls of granite, fitted together without mortar, standing to this day as proof of an architectural precision that demanded skill and vision and coordination and leadership. When European explorers encountered these ruins in the 19th century, many of them refused to accept that Africans had built them. They invented ancient Phoenicians, they invented wandering Arabians, they invented anyone but the people who actually lived there. because to accept the truth would have required them to dismantle the story they had already told, the story that silenced the voices. But voices do not disappear because they are silenced. They go underground. They move into the songs that grandmothers sing at dusk. They move into the proverbs that a father speaks when his son is about to make a choice. They move into the dances performed at harvest time, the dyes pressed into cloth, the patterns carved into wooden doors, the names given to children who will carry them across generations. Africa kept her memory in the body, in ceremony, in breath, in fire. The griots of West Africa were not simply storytellers.
They were living archives. A griot knew the genealogy of every family in the village. He knew who built what and when and why and at what cost. He knew the songs that called the spirits and the songs that sent them home. He stood at weddings and funerals and coronations and councils because without him, there was no continuity. Without him, the thread between past and present was cut. The griot was not decoration. The griot was the memory of the people made flesh. Colonialism understood this, and so it targeted the griots. It targeted the sacred groves. It targeted the masks and the shrines and the ceremonies. It understood that to control a people's future, you must first sever them from their past. When you do not know where you came from, you cannot question where you are being taken. But the severing was never complete, because here is what those who tried to erase these voices never fully understood. Memory is not only stored in the mind, it is stored in the body. It is stored in the particular way a woman ties her head wrap in the morning. It is stored in the flavor of a dish prepared according to no written recipe, but to the hands that have made it for centuries. It is stored in the rhythm that a man beats upon a drum without having been taught, because his grandfather beat the same rhythm, and his grandfather's grandfather beat it before him. It is stored in the land itself, in the rivers, in the trees. Memory is stubborn. It finds its way back. There is a generation rising now across the African continent and its diaspora that is going back to find what was buried. Historians are uncovering manuscripts, musicians are returning to traditional instruments, architects are studying pre-colonial design, linguists are documenting languages before the last speakers are gone. Artists are reclaiming symbols that were once called primitive and placing them in galleries and on walls and on skin. They are not simply preserving the past, they are insisting that the past was worth preserving, that it was rich, that it was sophisticated, that it was human in the fullest sense of that word. This is an act of profound resistance, because the greatest lie ever told about Africa was not about its resources or its geography or its governance. The greatest lie was about its people, that they were less, that they had contributed nothing, that they stood on the outside of human achievement looking in. That lie caused damage that ran deeper than any border drawn on a map. It entered the interior of people. It made some of them ashamed of the sound of their own language. It made some of them straighten their hair to match an image that was never theirs. It made some of them discard the names their grandparents gave them and take names that belonged to someone else's history. The wound was not only political, it was spiritual. And the healing, too, must be spiritual. Not in the sense of religion alone, though the sacred has always been central to African life and thought, but spiritual in the sense that it reaches beyond policy and economics and borders. It requires a people to look at themselves and see not what they were told to see, but what has always been there: the ingenuity, the resilience, the community, the beauty, the complexity, the full and irreducible humanity. The voices that were never heard were never silent. They were simply drowned out by louder instruments, by more powerful broadcasters, by a system that needed them to disappear. But now the instruments are changing, and the voices are returning, not as echoes of a vanished past, but as living, breathing, creating, insisting presences in the world, demanding that the record be corrected, that the story be expanded, that the names be spoken aloud in the places where they were deliberately forgotten. Every civilization leaves something behind. The question is never whether something was left. The question is who gets to decide what it means. Who gets to determine whether it is called a ruin or a monument, whether it is called superstition or philosophy, whether it is called noise or music, whether it is called nothing or a legacy. The time of that decision belonging only to one voice is over. The earth of this continent holds more history than any single narrative has ever been willing to hold, and the people who carry that history in their blood and their bodies and their memory are no longer waiting to be included in someone else's story. They are writing their own. And this time, the voices will be heard.